Welcome to 21st Sports Recap and Reaction for the Chicago Bears at the St. Louis Rams in their Week 10 matchup played November 15th, 2015. We're going to go over the scores and the stats and our breakdown and analysis. So starting off, the first possession of this game, the Rams would go 80 yards in 7 plays in about 3 minutes, capped off by a 6-yard touchdown run by Todd Gurley. Zerline added the extra point, and it was 7-0 St. Louis. And now, little did they know, they would never get in the end zone for the rest of the game. That would be their only touchdown, as the Bears would pretty much shut them down. They would hold them out of the end zone for the rest of the way. But on the next possession, Chicago would score in less than a minute when Jay Cutler hit Zach Miller for an 87-yard touchdown. Gould added the extra point, and this game was tied up at 7. But then the Rams would come back with about 5 minutes left in the first quarter with a 26-yard field goal by Zerline to take the lead back 10-7. But then the Bears came back with just seconds on the clock in the first to score a 35-yard field goal by Robbie Gould to tie this one back up, this time at 10. And so it was 10-10 after the first. Then in the second quarter, Zach Miller scores again, this time a 2-yard touchdown pass from Jay Cutler with about 7 minutes left before halftime, as the Bears had gone on a 7-minute drive, going 65 yards in 12 plays. Gould kicked the extra point, and Chicago was in the lead, 17-10, a lead that they would not relinquish thereafter. So then the Bears would end up coming right back less than 2 minutes later, scoring on an 83-yard touchdown pass. Cutler hit Langford on a screen, and Jeremy Langford took it 83 yards for the touchdown. Robbie Gould added the extra point, and it was now 24-10. Chicago up by 2 touchdowns. So that would be the score going into halftime. Then in the third quarter, the Rams were actually the only team that scored in the third when Zerline kicked his second field goal of the game, this one from 38 yards out, with less than 3 minutes left in the third, to make it 24-13 as the Rams cut the Bears' lead to 11. But that would be the final time the Rams would score in this game. We go into the fourth quarter, and in the fourth, Robbie Gould would hit a 37-yard field goal to make it 27-13. The Rams would just stop punting in the fourth. They just decided, hey, they did a fake punt. They went for it, and they turned it over on downs. And Robbie Gould got a 36-yard field goal with about 8 minutes left before halftime to make it 30-13. And then Jeremy Langford would score on a 6-yard touchdown run with about 5 minutes left to play in this game to make it 37-13 after Gould hit that extra point. And then we saw the interception by Foles. He was intercepted by Young. And then the Bears end up with a fumble by Carey. But the Rams, down at this point by 24 points, would not score another point, and this game would come to a close with the ball actually in their hands in Chicago territory in field goal range, but a field goal really wouldn't do them any good at that point. And so the Bears hold on to win this one 37-13. They're now 4-5 on the season. They actually have a winning record on the road. They're 3-2. The Rams are also now 4-5 on the season, and they're 3-2 at home. But Chicago coming up with a huge victory on the road. And they actually, with this win, that puts the Bears in contention in the NFC North, especially with the Packers having lost. The North is now wide open. It could be anyone's division at this point. This division is not done by a long shot. Chicago's definitely right there in the mix if they keep winning. And who would have thought? It seemed as if they were giving up on the season when they started getting rid of, Jared Allen and some other players, Bostic, and even with Forte being injured. But all of a sudden, here comes Chicago coming up big against the Rams, who now lose their second straight game after having been above 500. Now they fall back below 500. But in this game, Jay Cutler, 19 for 24, 258 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also had 24 yards on the ground off of 3 carries. Jeremy Langford, 20 carries for 73 yards and a touchdown. He also had 7 receptions for 109 yards. and a receiving touchdown, that 83-yard touchdown. But overall, he had 183 total yards in the 2 touchdowns in this game for Langford. And Zach Miller coming up big again. Zach Miller, 5 receptions for 107 yards and 2 touchdowns. Before the touchdown last week against the Chargers, Miller hadn't had a touchdown since 2011, and now in 2 weeks he has 3 touchdowns. So Cutler's found a new best friend, a new target. Is now Bennett, just 3 receptions for 18 yards, but he's blocking, so he's, doing his job there blocking. But Nick Foles, he was 17 for 36, 200 yards passing, no touchdowns, and an interception. Todd Gurley, he had that 1 rushing touchdown on the first possession for the Rams, but just 12 carries for 45 yards. He also had 3 receptions for 44 yards, so he ended up with 89 total yards for Todd Gurley, but not much production on the ground. Trey Mason also had a fumble in this game. He had 6 carries for 31 yards. And Gurley was the leading receiver for the Rams. The Rams just could not get it done on offense. We look at the kickers or line. He was perfect, 2 for 2 on the field goals and 1 for 1 on the extra points. And Gould was perfect as well. So he had a big performance by Gould after having kind of a poor performance on Monday night. But he comes up here with 3 for 3 on the field goals, 4 for 4 on the extra points. Then on defense, McClellan forced a fumble for the Bears defense, and Houston had a sack, and Young had an interception. And for the Rams, McLeod had a forced fumble, and Aaron Donald had 1.5 sacks. Hayes also had a half a sack. Look at the team stats. Chicago had 17 first downs. St. Louis, 12 first downs. On third down, the Rams were 4 for 14, 28% converted. They went for it twice on fourth down. They didn't get either. And Chicago was just 3 for 12 on third down, just 25% converted. They went for it once on fourth down, and they did convert. Total net yards, 397 for Chicago, 285 for St. Louis. On the ground, the Bears netted 153 yards. The Rams just 94. And through the air, the Bears netted 244. Cutler sacked twice, losing 14 yards. And for the Rams, 191 yards netted. Foles was sacked once, losing 9 yards. Look at the penalties. 8 penalties against the Rams for 57 yards. 4 penalties against the Bears, 44 yards. Both teams with fumbles. The Bears had 2 fumbles, which they lost. And the Rams lost 1 fumble, which they fumbled at once. And we look at the red zone. The Bears just 2 for 6 in the red zone. They were consistently in the red zone, but they only got 2 touchdowns in the red zone, just 33%. The Rams 1 for 2 in the red zone, 50%. The Bears 34 minutes and 22 seconds of possession, 25 minutes and 38 seconds for St. Louis. So Chicago gets a pretty shocking victory. Did not think the Bears were going to go in there and win this one. I mean, it was, they had the chance, obviously, and they did come through, but didn't think if they were going to win that they would win in such decisive fashion, running up the scores on Rams defense. This is a tough defense, too. The big credit goes out to the Bears, especially Langford, who's been coming up huge for Chicago in the absence of Forte. As he's doing his best Matt Forte impression, he's stepping right into that role and coming up big time. Of course, he had a couple of big plays, especially that 83-yard touchdown off of that screen. And of course, Miller had that 87-yard touchdown as Cutler was slinging it. And that was right there, more than half of his yards, more than 2/3 of Cutler's yards came on just those 2 plays. Just those 2 plays, 170 yards, and he had 258 on the day. But the Bears getting it done, even with the turnovers. They had a couple of fumbles. Of course, the Rams had a couple turnovers as well, the interception and the fumble. And they just, they weren't really committed to the run. Of course, Mason had that fumble on the ground. But still, they just weren't really... You got to run the ball. With the defense the Rams have, even when you're not having success, just keep running the ball. But they did not do that, and so that kind of is what hurt them in this game. They didn't have success through the air either. I mean, Todd Gurley was their leading rusher and their leading receiver, and he only had 45 yards rushing and 44 yards receiving. But Chicago, a big win for them. Like I said, it puts them in contention. They're on the outside looking in, but they're not that far out in the north. Like I said, with the Packers going down, the Packers are 6-3. The Bears are just 2 games behind them. In Minnesota, we'll see what happens with them in Oakland, as they're probably going to take first place if they can eke out a win. Although, you never know what's going to happen there. But last we checked it, probably Minnesota takes first place, but even the Bears would only be 3 games out of first, and they're right there in the mix of things with potential. If they keep winning games, you never know what could happen. As that's shocking to say in itself. I thought Chicago was pretty much giving up on the season, but not by a long shot, as they continue to keep winning games. They've now won 2 in a row. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It is greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a good day and had a great weekend and enjoyed all the sports.